You've lived this. The chart is clean, the context makes sense, you finally waited for the right entry, you clicked calmly, and for a few seconds everything seemed aligned. But as soon as the price starts moving in your favor, your chest tightens. The hand that was holding the mouse relaxes and tenses at the same time. That double, uncomfortable feeling arises: satisfaction for being right and fear of losing what you just conquered. And before the trade has room to breathe, you hit the close button. You close the position with a few crumbs. 2 minutes later, the market shoots exactly in the direction you had analyzed, hitting your perfect target. And then comes the punch in the gut. You realize you didn't lose to the price, you lost to your own anxiety. This is the mental game that traps thousands of traders in the cycle of operational anxiety. It's not just about fear, it's not just about small profits. It's not about insufficient technique, it's about psychological imprisonment. The market becomes an echo chamber of your impatience, your haste, your need for immediate relief. And if you don't name it, you have no way to break the cycle. So let's name it. This is emotional compulsion disguised as risk management. It's relief addiction. It's the inability to bear uncertainty. And this is much more serious than it seems at first glance. Because when you close a trade too early, it's not just the trade that dies, it's your self-confidence. And when you hold a bad trade too long, hoping it will come back, it's not just your stop that gets violated, it's your identity as a trader. Every impulsive click reinforces an internal circuit. Every premature closure feeds the belief, I can't stand to wait. Every time you ignore your target to secure something, you train your brain to prefer crumbs over consistency. And, like every emotional habit, it becomes a pattern, and patterns become your natural way of acting. Over time, that becomes your operational identity. Someone who knows how to analyze but doesn't know how to execute. Someone who sees opportunities but never captures the full reward. The deep root of this cycle begins long before the charts. It begins in the conditioning that shaped your brain throughout life. From early on, we were taught that a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. We were educated to value security over growth, certainty over courage, control over trust. The entire human emotional system was built to survive, not to perform. And the financial market is a place where the emotional survivor is precisely the one who loses money. In trading, you are not rewarded for avoiding discomfort. You are rewarded for tolerating it. The more you run from anxiety, the more it controls you. And the more it controls you, the more your operational cycle deteriorates. You need to understand this deeply. The market doesn't create your anxiety. It only reveals the anxiety you already carry. The chart is a mirror. The fluctuation is just a reflection of your internal instability. The candle doesn't stress you. It only illuminates the stress you tried to bury. And when that light hits the wrong place, you run to turn it off by clicking the close button too early. That's why you repeat the pattern. The anxiety isn't in the market. It's in you. And what happens when this pattern repeats for days? You destroy your relationship with risk, you crush your return potential, you condition your brain to think small, act small, and reap small. And worse, you create a regret cycle that feeds more anxiety, which generates more impulsive decisions, which produce more frustration. It's a downward spiral. It's the psychological equivalent of negative compound interest. Every small act of fear feeds the next fearful decision. Every impulsive click is a deposit in the account of your insecurity. And after a few weeks, the sum is devastating. So imagine two traders using the same strategy. One holds their trades to the target, accepts stops with maturity, and lets the plan play out. The other closes early, jumps between opportunities, and tries to guess the next move. Both have the same setup. The difference isn't technical, it's emotional. One acts like an operator, the other acts like a survivor. And the market is ruthless with survivors. This is the essential difference between the amateur trader and the professional trader. The amateur trades to feel something. He seeks emotions, relief, control, validation. The professional trades to execute a process. He doesn't want emotion, he wants consistency. The amateur looks at each trade as if it were the final proof of his ability. The professional looks at each trade as a small part of a larger system. The amateur is stuck in the short term, the professional lives in the long term. The amateur is a slave to dopamine. The professional is a servant of discipline. You need to choose which side you want to be on. And the problem is that before you choose consciously, you are already choosing emotionally every single day. When you close a trade too early, what you're saying is, I don't trust myself. When you jump from strategy to strategy, you're saying, I can't sustain a process. When you trade because you're bored, you're affirming, I depend on the market to feel alive. And this is the greatest psychological imprisonment of all. You start using the market as a way to regulate emotions. Instead of using your mind to operate the market, you use the market to soothe your mind. And that creates addiction. Addiction to clicking, addiction to being in the market, addiction to avoiding silence, addiction to erasing thoughts, addiction to dopamine. And addiction isn't controlled with willpower. Addiction is controlled with awareness, boundaries, and method. That's why so many traders study for years and keep making the same mistakes. It's not technical ignorance, it's emotional dependence. They think they need a new setup, but what they need is a new identity. And identity doesn't change with knowledge. Identity changes with conscious repetition. But here is the crucial point, perhaps the most important in this first block. What you call operational anxiety is, in reality, fear of feeling. Not fear of losing money. It's fear of feeling the sensation of losing. Not fear of a stop. It's fear of the internal narrative that comes with the stop. Not fear of risk. It's fear of your self-image being threatened. You're not running from the market. You're running from yourself. And that's where the problem gets even deeper. You run from yourself when discomfort grows. It's a conditioned reflex. The mind learned that any emotional tension needs to be resolved quickly. And the market is the perfect stage for that reflex to repeat without breaks. Every candle is a new opportunity to feel something. Every swing awakens fear or hope. And you confuse movement with progress. You click because you believe acting is the same as evolving. But not all action is progress. Most of the time, it's escape disguised as productivity. The anxious trader doesn't trade to win, but to avoid the feeling of standing still. He can't stand the emptiness between one trade and the next, and it's in that emptiness that all the voices he tries to silence are revealed. Insecurity, impatience, the need to prove something. So he seeks in the chart what he should seek in himself. It's stability. Only the chart doesn't offer stability. It amplifies everything. It's the cruelest and most honest mirror that exists, because unlike people, the market doesn't lie. It doesn't comfort you. It just shows you the exact reflection of your emotional control. If you're chaotic, the chart becomes a battlefield. If you're patient, the chart turns into a calm sea. But there is a painful irony here. The anxious trader thinks the market is chasing him, when in reality he is the one chasing the market. He runs after opportunities as if they were oxygen. And the more he runs, the more he suffocates. What he doesn't realize is that the real oxygen is in not needing to run. The market rewards the observer, not the hunter. It rewards those who have the courage to wait. Those who understand that downtime is part of the strategy. The absence of operation is also operation. Operational anxiety is the opposite of strategic patience. It's the inability to let time do what the click cannot. It is born from the unconscious belief that control creates security. But in trading, the more you try to control, the more vulnerable you become. The professional understands this deeply. He doesn't try to eliminate uncertainty. He learns to live with it. While the amateur tries to force the market to obey, the professional adapts to the rhythm the market imposes. The amateur fights the waves. The professional surfs them. The amateur wants to predict the ocean. The professional wants to float on it. And what keeps the professional free is something the anxious trader still hasn't understood. Patience is the true form of power. Because patience is not passivity. Patience is mastery. It's controlled strength. It's the ability not to react when everything inside you screams to react. It's the wisdom to wait for the right moment, even if your whole body wants to anticipate the outcome. Patience is the most valuable muscle a trader has. And like any muscle, it is built by bearing load. Every time you feel the urge to act and don't, you strengthen your patience. Every time you respect the plan, even while feeling discomfort, you gain emotional resistance. And it's that resistance that separates the consistent trader from the impulsive one. The market doesn't reward the smartest. It rewards the most patient, the one who knows how to wait for the right setup, the right context, the aligned signal. The one who understands that profit is a consequence of waiting, not of rushing. But the anxious mind can't stand that concept. It wants the reward now. It wants to prove something to itself. It wants to feel dopamine, and dopamine is the enemy of consistency. Because the quick pleasure of a small gain sabotages the deep pleasure of constant evolution. You choose dopamine or discipline, emotion or consistency. The anxious trader chooses emotion. The professional chooses consistency. And there's another point few notice. Operational anxiety is also the legitimate child of perfectionism. The perfectionist believes that if he studies enough, he will eliminate error, that there will come a time when the market becomes predictable. That perfect execution is possible. But in trading, the pursuit of perfection is the most sophisticated form of fear. It's fear disguised as excellence. You don't want to improve, you want to avoid making mistakes, but error is part of the game. Without error, there is no learning. Without learning, there is no progress. And without progress, there is no consistency. Perfection is an illusion sold to the ego. Consistency is a reality built by humility. The mature trader accepts error, but refuses to repeat it. The amateur refuses to accept error and therefore repeats it forever. That's why many spend years in the same place. They study new strategies, watch videos, change setups, but don't change themselves. Because they are still trying to erase symptoms instead of curing the cause. And the cause is simple, fear of feeling. You close early because you want to feel relief. You increase position size because you want to feel control. You move the stop because you want to feel hope. You trade outside the plan because you want to feel important. Everything is feeling. Everything is escape. Everything is the same pattern, avoiding the pain of being vulnerable in front of the market. But here is the paradox, the one that defines the traders who survive and thrive. You only gain control when you accept you have none. The professional understands that the control he seeks is not in the price, it's in the reaction. Not in the candle, but in the behavior. He knows that the only stop that really matters is the emotional stop. Because once you lose internal control, the financial stop is just a consequence. That's why the real challenge isn't trading right, but it's bearing the discomfort of being wrong without losing calm. That is the true competence of the mature trader. The beginner seeks strategies that eliminate error. The professional seeks mental states that sustain error. He doesn't try to escape discomfort. He integrates it. And when you integrate discomfort, it stops dominating you. This is the point where trading becomes philosophy. The market becomes a living metaphor for life. Losses teach you humility. Profits teach you patience. Stops teach you acceptance. And time teaches you that no victory is worth it if it costs your peace of mind. But perhaps the most painful and liberating insight is this. You are not anxious because of the market. You are anxious because you never learned to wait for yourself. You don't trust the process because you've never seen yourself keep promises. And trading, unlike anything else you've experienced, accepts no disguises. It shows you exactly who you are. Every mistake is a mirror. Every victory too. And when you see the true reflection, you have only two options: hide again or start rebuilding yourself. But most choose the hiding place. They open the chart, increase screen time, look for new videos, download new PDFs, anything except looking inside. Because looking inside hurts. And the anxious trader, above all, is afraid of pain. But what he doesn't understand is that it is precisely that pain that would set him free. And that's why operational anxiety is not just a technical problem, it's a spiritual symptom. It's the inner emptiness trying to fill itself with ticks, candles, and clicks. It's the mental noise trying to silence the silence that bothers. It's the need to always be doing something because stillness reveals how much you still don't know yourself. And the market as a mirror amplifies that ignorance until you can't stand to see yourself anymore. But there is a way out. And it begins when you understand that calm is not a state that arrives, it's a decision you practice. Calm is a choice you repeat until it becomes nature. It doesn't come from formulas, but from acceptance. Accepting that you don't need to always be right. Accepting that losses are part of it. Accepting that slowness is also progress. When you understand this, the market stops being an arena and becomes a laboratory. Each trade stops being a test of personal worth and becomes an observation experience. You stop trading to prove and start trading to understand. And in that moment, anxiety begins to lose strength. Because what feeds anxiety is resistance to reality. What destroys anxiety is intelligent surrender to it. But surrender is not giving up. It's perception. It's the awareness that fighting the inevitable is the real waste of energy. While you try to control every price movement, the professional controls only one thing, his own mind. He doesn't try to eliminate fear. He learns to breathe with it. He doesn't try to suppress the impulse. He learns to observe it. The difference is between who reacts and who responds. The anxious trader reacts to the market. The mature trader responds to the market. Reacting is automatic. Responding is conscious. The anxious mind is conditioned by invisible triggers. Every red candle awakens memories of loss. Every green candle awakens greed. The body reacts before reasoning, and that's where the cycle begins. Emotion, impulse, action, regret. The experienced trader breaks the cycle where it is born between emotion and action. He creates a space, and in that space, he breathes. He asks himself, what am I really feeling right now? That simple question is the beginning of liberation, because when you name the emotion, it loses power. What is unconscious controls you. What is conscious, you govern. But anxiety is cunning. It changes shape. When you think you've mastered it, it comes back as overconfidence. When you think you're calm, it tests you with boredom. The market's silence is the worst enemy of the restless mind. The trader who cannot be at peace outside the market will never be at peace inside it. And that's why consistency doesn't start on the charts. It starts in routine. In how you wake up, breathe, eat, sleep. In how you handle time when no candles are moving. The market is just the projection of what you practice when no one is watching. You don't need more information. You need more awareness. You don't need more indicators. You need more introspection. You don't need more setups. You need more serenity. Because the true edge, the real advantage, that is not on the screen. It's inside you. The common trader seeks advantage in the market. The wise trader builds advantage in himself. He understands that every decision is born from an internal state, and that the internal state is shaped by invisible habits. You don't control the price, but you control the mental environment that decides how to react to the price. And here is a hard truth. Anxiety will not disappear. You just learn to live with it. It is the constant reminder that you are alive, vulnerable, human. What changes is your relationship with it. The beginner tries to escape fear. The professional invites it into the process. He says, come, sit with me, but don't touch the mouse. He acknowledges fear, but doesn't obey it. He feels discomfort, but doesn't act on it. That is emotional maturity. The ability to feel everything but choose what to do with what you feel. That is the freedom the anxious trader seeks without knowing, and when that maturity arrives, everything changes. Chart stops being a threat, losses stop being catastrophe, profit stops being euphoria. You stop measuring your identity by results and start measuring it by attitudes. You become the observer of your own behavior, and that awareness changes everything because what was automatic becomes choice. What was instinct becomes discernment. What was reaction becomes art. Anxiety lives on haste. Consistency lives on process. Haste wants results now. Process wants solid identity later. Haste is the impulse of the ego. Process is the call of wisdom. And the mature trader understands haste is too expensive. Every time you try to speed up time, the market charges you interest. And the interest on impatience is always paid in regret. Haste is emotional debt. And every impulsive trade is a new installment on that debt. The professional doesn't avoid time. He uses it. He understands that consistency is a product of behavioral compound interest. Every small right decision adds to the previous one. Every time you respect the plan, you deposit trust. Every time you wait for the signal, you accumulate patience. Every time you accept the stop without drama, you strengthen serenity. And one day, without noticing, the curve of your mind changes direction. Chaos becomes clarity. Fear becomes focus. Impulse becomes intention. And that's the point where the trader stops operating the market and starts operating himself. But there is one last invisible enemy: comparison. Nothing feeds anxiety more than looking at someone else's profit. You see someone post results and the subtle poison enters. Why does he make it and I don't? That simple thought destroys what you took months to build, because it shifts your focus from process to result, from learning to validation, from growth to competition. And comparison is the fastest shortcut to despair. You are not competing with other traders. You are competing with your impulsive self. And the only real prize is mastering what masters you. Consistency is lonely. It is born in silence, grows in discipline, and blooms in time. No one will see when you stop clicking. No one will applaud when you respect the stop. But that is the invisible work that builds visible freedom. The mature trader doesn't seek approval, he seeks evolution. And when he finally understands this, the anxiety cycle dissolves like mist under the sun of awareness. But perhaps the greatest symbol of liberation is the moment when you can sit in front of the screen, watch the price go up and down, feel your heart race, and still do nothing. That is mastery. Not because you made money, but because you gained control over yourself. That is the true profit of the trader. The rest is just consequence. There comes a point when you understand that the market was never the villain. It was the mirror you avoided your whole life. Every swing revealed a part of you that you preferred to hide. The fear of losing, the desire to control, the rush to be validated, the inability to trust. It was all there long before you opened your first chart. Trading just shone a light on what already existed. And that is the hardest truth to accept, because it takes the blame off the market and puts the responsibility back in your own hands. But that's exactly where freedom begins. When you understand that the problem is internal, the solution becomes internal too. It's no longer about nailing the entry, but about adjusting the internal state that decides when and why you enter. You start to notice invisible patterns. Anxiety appears whenever you want to skip steps. Fear arises whenever you try to control the uncontrollable. Regret comes whenever you trade on impulse. And little by little, awareness becomes your new edge. From then on, every trade becomes a spiritual practice, an exercise in patience, focus, and humility. You no longer seek to beat the market, but to beat yourself. And beating yourself is the hardest act there is, because it requires abandoning the ego that needs to be right, the ego that says, this time it will work, the ego that confuses conviction with stubbornness. The trader who matures learns to let the ego lose so that the plan can win. He understands that consistency is the result of hundreds of small surrenders. Surrender to uncertainty, surrender to discipline, surrender to time. And paradoxically, it is in that surrender that true power is born, because whoever surrenders to the process masters the outcome. Anxiety is fed by the haste to harvest before planting, and trading is a field that accepts no harvest without sowing. Every candle is a season, every loss is pruning, every profit is fruit. If you try to rush the cycle, the ground dries up, but if you respect time, the ground flourishes. That's why consistency is less about performance and more about rhythm. The mature trader dances with the market. He doesn't fight time, he moves with it, and that's why he survives where others break. There is a kind of silence that only the disciplined trader knows. It's the silence after a winning trade that didn't fill him with euphoria. It's the silence after an accepted stop with serenity. It's the silence after a day with no trades because nothing was clear and he respected the emptiness. That silence is proof that you have overcome the addiction to haste, that the market no longer commands your pulse. It's at that point that anxiety loses the throne, because you finally discovered that the true victory is not financial, it's psychological. You realize that the market will never give you peace. It will only give you opportunities to prove that you already possess it. And that's what changes everything, because from then on, what guides you is no longer the fear of being wrong, but the confidence in following the process. You stop trading out of emotion and start trading out of intention. You stop seeking security and start seeking clarity. You stop measuring success by the result and start measuring it by fidelity to the plan. And that change is silent, invisible, but transformative. You no longer need to chase opportunities. They start coming to you because now you can wait. The anxious trader lives on reaction. The free trader lives on selection. And that selection is the fruit of internal mastery. Calm doesn't make you slow, it makes you precise. The world screams, the market pulses, the candles explode, and you remain there, centered, present, observing. Not because you are cold, but because you learned that the greatest profit is to remain whole when everything around seems to collapse. In the end, trading is just a mirror of life. Those who seek control lose freedom. Those who seek validation lose identity. Those who seek result lose process. But those who seek awareness find consistency. And when you understand this, the anxiety cycle breaks. Not because fear disappears, but because it stops commanding. You see it, you hear it, you acknowledge it, and you choose not to obey. The journey of the mature trader is the journey of someone who learned to be comfortable in discomfort. He understands that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. He understands that patience is not waiting for time to pass, but remaining whole while time does its work. He understands that consistency is the result of hundreds of ordinary days, not one extraordinary day. And he understands that in the end, the market doesn't measure your intelligence, but your ability to remain calm while the world goes mad. So the next time the price starts moving and your heart races, remember this: the real game is not on the chart. It's in the space between an impulse and a decision. That's where everything is defined. You can repeat the anxiety cycle or break it. You can keep reacting or start responding. You can keep seeking control or learn to trust. The choice is always yours, and it's in that choice, repeated hundreds of times, that the trader who survives, thrives, and finally rests is built. The market doesn't defeat you. You defeat yourself when you believe you need to prove something. Freedom comes when you no longer need to beat the market to feel peace. Freedom comes when the click stops being a reflex and becomes a decision. Freedom comes when you understand that patience is power, and that the true profit is being present, whole, while everyone else is trying to escape from themselves.